So, what do you think accounts for time and what defines life? What helps us to not be strangers with ourselves? Every morning when you wake up and you look at your mirror, you're able to see the person in the mirror and smile, right? Because you know it's you. What if one day you wake up and you don't know who the person is? What if you walk around to the kitchen, you find someone, a lady standing, and you have no trace of memory left, right? The word I used here was memory, correct? So yeah, we are here this week to talk about memory. We are here to talk about what is memory, what are the models of memory, what are types, and how can we improve memory. So this is the definition of memory. It helps us to understand memory, where it's like a storage system where information is stored in, and you recall or retrieve, or you call upon it when at a later time when you need it. So it's a very active, constructive process where continuously items or information is categorized and organized to form meaningful information. So let's see this. Can you take a piece of paper? You can pause the video maybe and take a piece of paper and start writing the names of 7 dwarfs. If you can remember the names, just list them down and let's see how much you are able to remember. All right, you can resume the video now. And as you do that, just check if you got these 7 right. Well, I'm hopeful that most of you who got the 7 right would agree with me. There are several factors that has enabled you to do that, right? If you are a Disney movie fan, if you watched it not too long ago, or if you watched it so many times, you know it. And if you are someone like me who is not really you're not really into Disney, you've not watched it in a recent time, maybe you're not able to recall the names, or maybe none of those. So there are several factors that do help us in remembering certain information that we need. So we have to understand that based on models. So there are 2 different models that I'll talk about here. The first one is called ESR model, where it's encoding information. That is, think about it in the way where you have a computer, and if you are typing in information like this, so when you type in information, that's encoding process. And then the message you have encoded or you have entered in gets stored, like in the computer you have a hard disk here. The hard disk enables you to store that information, and then whenever needed you just go to that folder, click on it, and it opens up. Boom. So that's when the process is called retrieval. So retrieval is when you need it from the storage, you are able to open the file or the relevant information. So this is a way to look at memory. The other one is called a 3-stage process, where the stimulus from the environment is taken in through the sensation process, and from sensory memory, there is first storage spot, or the first stop, which is called sensory memory. It goes to a short-term memory, which is the second storage spot, and then it stores in what's called long-term memory for a longer period of time. So these are 3 stages, and we'll be talking about it in brief moment. All right, I want you to look at the screen and see and look at what you see for a second, and then once I'm done, I want you to write it down in the sheet of paper that's in front of you. All right, here you go. All right, I want you to write down what you saw, all the 9 letters. All right, now that you have it written, or you attempted to write it, check if this is right. Right, if you got those right, well, it just tells you that you were able to keep that information stored for a few seconds in what's called the sensory memory. The sensory memory helps you to store in information, and for a time that it thinks, okay, it kind of like tries to figure out, is this relevant information? Do I move it to the short term, if that is, or else I will make space for the new information, and I'm just going to degrade, or I'm just going to leave the space. So you can think of it in iconic and iconic memory, which is iconic as the visual part. That's why you are able to form trails of light, because the path it takes gets stored in your eye, in your memory, from your eye for a few seconds than when it leaves its spot. So it forms like a continuous trail, and you're able to see this pattern formed. That is iconic memory. If it's happened to you, like it has happened to me multiple times, when someone would ask me, "What is the time?" and I'll be like, what?" And then I would say, "Oh, okay, it is 2 o'clock." So in that case, what has happened here is I was not paying attention, but when my brain still was able to interpret what the question was, and it could find the answer to the question because of what's called iconic memory, which is the auditory memory. So this is how long they can stay. So this is the first part of this memory model. And then you have what's called the second part. But before that, let's do another quick activity. I want you to look at the screen again, but at this time, write down what did you see in the third row. I know it was tricky because you were looking at the first one, but see if you can recall and remember what you wrote in the third line. I'm going to give you again. Now try and see if you can recall it. All right? If you did, you could check if you got this right. And if you got it right, it's because now you knew what you had to look at. That is selective attention process. So now this kind of made sense to you in your mind, and you were able to store it for a little longer. Now you may remember this even until the end of the presentation, that it was VMSO, right? That is because of what's short term. I just love this. I just wanted to add it here to understand short term, because it happens to me all the time. I go to the kitchen and I'll be like, "Honey, what did I come in here for?" So I'm sure that you would also be able to relate to this in your own life too. And if you are trying to remember something as long as this, and if I ask you to recall what you see on the screen and write it down, do you think you'll be able to do it? Do you think if you will be able to remember this, although I showed you more than 30 seconds, well, it's quite long, right? You'll be able to understand that using the process what's called short-term memory. The short-term memory, or the working memory, is where the processing is done temporarily and is stored for some time before moving to what's called the long-term memory. So here what happens is you use what the process called chunking, because the capacity of short-term memory is not too large. In order to extend it, we use what's called chunking. Let's try to do this. There will be a number that will flash, and I want you to recall the number, but use chunking, which is group them together. All right? See if you can group them and then remember those. All right. If you group them like this, yes, you may be able to remember. That's the reason why we have 4 numbers in Social Security number. That is easier for us to recall when it's chunked. And the second thing that you can do in short term to make it go into long term is to extend the duration. So the only way, or there are so many other ways, but the way that I want to emphasize here is called maintenance rehearsal, which is just repeat, repeat, and repeat. That said, rehearsal is the way you are able to take in the information from short term and move it to a long term memory. So this is all about short term, and in order for you to understand how the reason why we are able to remember the 4 numbers, as research says, we are able to remember somewhere between 7 plus 2, which is 9, and minus 2, which is 5. So somewhere between 5 and 9 are the numbers that we are able to recall. For better recall, that is how much memory can hold in short term. So if you think about this, this is the list I give you to go and buy. If you have to remember all of this, if you chunk them together, okay, salad, ingredients, and pizza and laundry, maybe the recall might be much better than recalling it as an individual product, right? So encoding could be done, the process of encoding is moving the information from short term to long term, could be done in three different ways, by visual, by auditory, and understanding the meaning of it. So research says if you understand the meaning and study, that is, the recall is much longer, the chances of you to remember that is much longer than for you to listen through hearing and visual. So this is a good time for me to point out that when we say learning styles, I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditory learner. Well, I'm sorry to burst the bubble here, but I don't know if you know it. It is a myth. It is not true. It is not something that's proven that a person can be a visual learner or an auditory learner. So it's not true. So if you're trying to remember something, remember the meaning of it. You will remember that for a long time. All right, the last thing is long-term memory. This is relatively unlimited, as in the capacity and duration you can store for a long time. Information that's sent from short-term to long-term is able to arrange itself and be in a spot where easily you are able to retrieve it when you need it. When you're able to do that over time, it gets stored in the long term. There are different types. Explicit and implicit are the two main types, which is conscious recall process is required for explicit memory, and unconscious way or more automatic kind of process is the implicit memory. Explicit, you can think of it like this. If I have to know a banana is yellow and spider has 8 legs, or there are 12 months in a year, as examples say the facts, then in the memory that I carry because of the facts and general knowledge, the prefrontal cortex, right, is called semantic memory. And episodic memory is when I know out of my personal experience, like graduation date and birthday of my mom or my sister, is the episodic memory, and based on episodes that you recall. This is more conscious part, the hippocampus of your brain. But the implicit, or the memory that does not require conscious effort, is when I drive a car, or when I drive a cycle, a bike, or brush my teeth. I don't have to think, okay, now that I have to carry, have my right foot, what do I do with my left foot? I don't think of it when I walk, right? So those kind of things are procedural memory, things that you are classically conditioned, and things that you are able to remember because of previous exposure are priming. So these are different types of long term. You can look at examples, and I think it's more self-explanatory than. So see if you can do this. I mean, this will help you understand and differentiate implicit memory from the explicit. Try and see if you ask your friend to describe to their friend how to tie the knot on your shoe without using words, without using actions, just using words. How can someone describe tying a shoe? See if how that is possible. That is because that is how our brain processes of something that is as simple as this. We don't really think about it, and we just do it. So that kind of explains the difference of implicit and explicit. All right, just recall remember a penny. Yes, you do remember seeing a penny, but let me see if you can kind of look at these different types and tell me which one is the real penny. I'll give you a second. You can look at it, take a penny, and see if you're able to look at it and compare and find out which is the right one. You'll be surprised to see the right answer is A, but not, in my experience so far, not one person has got it right. So try to do it with your friends and family and see if they're able to get it right. If you don't really look for information, penny, you would have seen penny, used penny for a long time, but if you don't really pay attention, this is a good example to miss out things. All right, so this is all that I have for today for this video. In the next part of it, you're going to look at different memory strategies to improve memory, and different memory problems, and why do we forget, and things like that. All right.